Welcome to the Soapbox, where I talk about anything that's been on my mind this week. And this week, what's been on my mind is the fact that AEW needs a brand split. And I'll tell you why. When AEW launched, it was the Ellis Island of professional wrestling for wrestlers. It promised freedom, creativity, and all wrestling styles, from the angelic high flying of Arena Mexico to the hard hitting action of Japan. It was built around the elite in Jericho and Cody and Moxley, and quickly from critically acclaimed match, AEW would be known as where the best wrestle. And over time, the roster grew too, into possibly the greatest roster in professional wrestling history. And it's hard to argue against it when you have names like Ospreay, names like Omega, names like Kyle Fletcher, Takeshita, Mercedes Moné, Jamie Hayter, Tony Storm wrestling on this roster at the same time, all in their respective primes. How could this be a bad thing? What could be the drawbacks from having such a talented roster? Simple: too much talent and not enough TV time. 4 to 6 hours, if you count Ring of Honor, for 170 professional wrestlers. And there's a great discrepancy of who gets that TV time. Some stars wrestle weekly, and other stars disappear for months at a time, waiting for that call from AEW, like Shador Sanders on draft night. Even with this crazy, insane, deep roster, shows like Collision and Ring of Honor still feel skippable sometimes. And I know if it's frustrating to me as a fan, I could only imagine how it feels to be a wrestler in this situation. So what is the solution? AEW needs a reset. AEW needs a brand split. Dynamite, Collision, Ring of Honor should all be distinct brands. And there's great storytelling reason for it. Khan has lost control. Arson, breaking entry, kidnapping, and that's just all the crimes Hangman Adam Page and Swerve has committed, let alone anybody else in AEW. He's only one man, and he has to delegate some of that responsibility to people that he trusts. He has to appoint new interim EVPs of these 3 brands. First, Christopher Daniels for Ring of Honor, a former interim EVP who gave his last match for the sake of a better AEW. For Collision, Rocky Romero, the international pipeline between New Japan and CMLL that makes all this relationship, that makes the Forbidden Door happen. And last and certainly not least, Dynamite, headed by Bryan Danielson, a top 5 wrestler of all time, a true locker room leader. And he tasked them with putting together a brand of 60 or so talents by the end of the month. And of course, throughout the year, you can have trades and call-ups and signing free agents. I want to talk about each brand's identity. I think the brand's identity should be tied to the wrestlers that are headed these brands, the interim EVPs for these brands. Like Christopher Daniels, he is a founding father, a pioneer of Ring of Honor, and I think he would add a veteran touch to this new version of Ring of Honor, a focus on making it gritty and focusing and having the same hunger and energy it did in the first years that made Ring of Honor so great. Creating a place for stars to prove themselves and for vets to prove why they should have been signed a long time ago. Working with independent promotions like Defy and DPW, also international partners that AEW doesn't use regularly like DDT or TJPW. Rebuilding ROH tournaments and legacy pay-per-views, ROH tournaments like Top Prospects and Survival of the Fittest. Run through just a couple of what these divisions could look like. And I did take a lot of liberties because it's Ring of Honor, and I wanted all or as many talented people that I feel like are TV ready on either Collision or AEW. So you do have Shane Taylor Promotions as a 6-man champ. You have the Von Erichs as your tag team champions. You have Trish Adora as your women's television champion. You have Sammy Guevara as your men's television champion. And you have Deonna Purrazzo and Lee Moriarty as your women's and men's world champions, respectively. Honestly, I just want to say, I think Lee Moriarty is pure champion, and Deonna Purrazzo should win new pure championship for the women's division. I think it would be in everybody's best interest to streamline the product and to put as little and to put as few championships as possible on Ring of Honor to maximize everybody's time. So I believe a great way to do that is to kind of have a callback to Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson and have them unify the champions, pure champion versus ROH world champion. And I want both the pure champions to win. And I think it's a win-win. You would get Athena on AEW television. She has nothing left to prove. She's broken every record. She's beaten everybody on that brand. Give it to Deanna. She carries that momentum, and you could build a brand under her. Then you have Lee Moriarty. I would have him defeat Bandito once again. You get someone that can hold down this division and build it under them as the top prospects tournaments comes and the division gets stronger and stronger and stronger, along with being able to now being able to have Bandito on AEW television regularly. If you're interested in a more fuller view of how I want ROH to feel or I want ROH to look, there's a link in the description for the full ROH video that I've made previously, and there should be a clickable link on somewhere on the screen so you can watch that video. Now, let's go to Rocky Romero's Collision. And Rocky Romero has a huge background in New Japan and CMLL and the international offices, and is a reason a lot of the Forbidden Door stuff happens. If anything, he is the Forbidden Door. So he's bringing that international global identity to the show. The focus should be on stylistic clashes, dream matches, and international flavor. New Japan, CMLL, DDT, and Stardom regularly appearing on this brand. In-ring promos and feuds built through matches and vignettes. So to start, the trios division headed up by the Ops. Some cornerstones or some people that I feel like in this division would be the next one or two champions is LFI and Bullet Club Gold, but also in notable names like Garcia and Private Party in this trios division. I feel like they were both kind of scapegoated after the whole Death Riders things kind of went haywire and they weren't really given the chance to actually be champions. The Daniel Garcia TNT championship run left a lot to be desired, and so did the Private Party tag team title run as well, for me at least. The TVS championship division, which is the women's division that will be on this brand, and it's a television title, so I do believe that weekly challenges, if a good guy is holding this championship, they should be defending it every single week. But since Mercedes Moné is holding this championship, you'll get championships at, once a month at every pay-per-view, because that's the heel thing to do. Notable names in this division, two notable names who I would mark as the two next champions is Athena and Billie Starkz. Athena losing to Mercedes Moné. There's definitely a story there. She gets her redemption at All In and becomes the TBS champion, along with Billie Starkz, who has unfinished business with Athena from the Ring of Honor days, who failed to defeat her 3 times and captured that ROH Women's World Championship division. This is very interesting. The current champion, Kenny Omega. The current champion and the International Championship division. And honestly, this is the division which I'm most looking forward to, because I see this division as either something like the never open weight style, or it's hard hitting action, or you get something like the CMLL cruiserweights, a lot of high flying action and dipping and diving. And then you have people on this roster where it would become a styles clash, where you get that hard hitting never open weight versus that crazy high flyer. And I think those would make for some very interesting matches. The current champion, Kenny Omega, but who I see as the next champion is Kyle Fletcher. He is the total package. What is there not to like? He is the protostar. He is the future of AEW. And the champion after that, I would mark as a notable name, is Speedball Mike Bailey. Yes, we love Jet Speed, RIP Jet Speed. But he just has that babyface fire. He has that likability that I want to see him, absolutely take over. And I want to see Speedball, be utilized as full potential. And I would love to see Speedball and Kyle Fletcher go at it for this international championship. Last but certainly not least, the world title of the show is the Continental Championship. The champion being Okada. Omega doesn't beat him at All In, and quick side tangent, if Omega and Okada go at each other at All In, which I think they will, because every time they come together, it's framed in the background. It would be crazy if they didn't at this point. I think they should not merge the titles. I think you keep it 2 titles, 2 separate titles. Have a Kenny Omega try to defend both titles and be a fighting champion, and and eventually succumbing to his sickness or succumbing to the rigors of defending these championships every single week consistently. Where maybe a Kyle Fletcher takes advantage and beats him earlier in the night, or maybe he has a match with Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita in the same night. Maybe Kyle Fletcher wins, and then later on in the night, Takeshita, maybe Kyle Fletcher loses earlier in the night, and Takeshita is later on in the night able to grab that Continental Championship away from Kenny Omega. And how beautiful will that be? Or the complete opposite, because, if you didn't know, Collision is very Don Callis family coded. Regardless, if Kenny Omega is a champion, I would have Takeshita beat Kenny Omega, and somewhere down the line after Jay White comes back, I would have Jay White beat Takeshita for that. Of course, if you have the Continental Championship, you would have the C2 as well, Collision exclusive tournament. Of course, last but not least, we have AEW Dynamite, headed by Bryan Danielson, bringing wrestling prestige and discipline and storytelling and logic. Its focus would be on top tier stars, classic storytelling and promos, and big matches and build up. A more traditional wrestling show, but still AEW flavored. Having the tag team championships headed by the Hurt Syndicate, championship division, which is the television championship headed by Adam Cole. The AEW Women's World Championship headed by Toni Storm. And the AEW World Championship division headed up by Jon Moxley. And it would also be the home of the Owen Hart Cup, a Dynamite exclusive tournament, kind of folding into that prestige and legacy driven focus. If you made it this far in the video, I would appreciate if you liked and or subscribed, and also drop down in the comments, who would you put as the head of your brand? Who would you make the head of ROH, the head of Collision, the head of Dynamite, and how you would build AEW? I'll be liking and chatting with everybody down below. Let me know. And with this, each brand would have a unique identity, style, and even leadership philosophies, creating a system where every wrestler has a purpose. Every wrestler has screen time. Everybody doesn't have to be a champion or win, but just having the opportunity to showcase that they're one of the best wrestlers is enough. You do some math, you can showcase 30 plus wrestlers every pay-per-view cycle with just AEW Dynamite. It gives fans a reason to watch every single show and follow each division closely. It fixes the ranking problems. They could reset every month. They could every post pay-per-view, and they can be the backbone for amazing professional wrestling story. And even recently has been the backbone of one of the greatest stories in recent AEW history, the story of Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland. They fought for that #1 contender shot and soon became rivals. Rankings can set up the story, and then as the feud goes on, you can add emotions and layers to it to make it more interesting and more interpersonal. And honestly, if you ask me, the best version of AEW is when it has structure and competition and personal storytelling. But do you agree AEW needs a brand split? How would you do it? What would you take away? What would you add? Leave it down in the comments down below and let me know. And peace.